All right, guys, let me start with sharing my screen. Give me a moment. I hope you all can see my screen. Okay, guys, let's get started. We have a very, very interesting workshop today. In almost less than an hour, I will actually explain you how to create an AI-led insurance planner bot without having any coding background as well. Okay. So that's going to be the objective. I'm going to show you what we will end up creating, and then I will tell you how we have done that and how it could be useful to anybody. So let me give you a demo of that insurance bot that we will end up creating. So let me go to that sheet. If you notice here, let me remove this. If you notice here on your screen, you will see I have got a data sheet that I'm collecting for any imaginary user. Uh, and then once I collect the data sheet on that or information, some basic information about that user, then I will have my AI insurance bot to recommend various insurance policies to that individual based on the data that the individual has provided. Assuming the age of the individual is 35, the family size is 2, the monthly income is 45,000 rupees, car loan is 0, no car, or maybe no loan on the car. Health status, right now, there are no issues, right? Location, which city the person is based out of, or what kind of a property area the person is based out of. Is it a city area? Is it a village area? So I'm assuming the person is from a city. Monthly expense, and for the city as well. By the way, I can specify tier one, tier two, tier three cities depending upon the size of the city, right? Whether the person is a smoker or not. Then monthly expenses are also mentioned, whether the person has any kind of home loan or not. Savings, how much of saving the person has. Let's say I've given here as 100,000, 1 lakh, and any pre-existing coverage, 0. So there is no pre-existing coverage either. That means the person doesn't have any kind of personal insurances. So that's the assumption that we are making on the individual. All right. So with these assumptions in place, let's try and run it. Let's send this data to our AI insurance bot and let's see what kind of recommendation it gives us. So the moment I click on this button, which says generate insurance recommendation, it is running, it's sending this data that I've collected from the user to a large language model, the AI model, and then it gets a response and it displays the response over here. Let's read the response quickly. So as you can see, it has given a very tailored advice to the user. It says, here are tailored insurance coverage recommendations for the Indian citizens. So that's the assumption that I have given in my code, in my bot. Based on the provided details, the person should have health insurance. This much is the coverage. This is the approximate premium. It also gives the brief recommendation, brief reason for the recommendation. Then it gives the life insurance coverage, recommended coverage unit, and approximate premium for the same. Brief, again, the brief reason for the recommendation. So if you notice, it is recommending one health insurance, one life insurance, one personal accidental insurance, very important. One critical insurance, critical illness insurance as well, very interesting. It's also a great coverage to have, a critical illness cover. And it's also saying that family floater, so it should have a family floater insurance. And some advice that you may have an emergency fund, keep reviewing your cover continuously and explore some more riders about the insurance, right? So very, very detailed and very tailored, customized advice, insurance advice to the user. Now imagine for the same kind of an advice in real world, you have to probably read a lot of blogs, you have to go and consult a lot of experts, and even then you're not very sure whether the recommendation you're getting is truly a recommendation which is unbiased. Because if you go to an insurance agent and ask for the same, the insurance agent may have an ulterior motive of selling you something that you probably, or maybe oversell you something or cross sell you something that you probably don't require, right? But here there is no biasness. That is the beauty of this particular bot, right? Now, today's session, we will see how we create this bot. And I'm going to assume that nobody has any background of how LLMs work or how an API based or application programming interface based API bot actually works. So we'll explain. I'm going to explain all those steps to you in the coming less than 60 minutes. All right. But before that, let me talk about the sponsor of today's session. So the sponsor of today's session is IvyProSchool, Ivy Professional School. They have transitioned more than 32,500 lives, professional careers into the AI space, data and AI space since 2008, and consistently top ranked among the best data and AI schools in India. Has 50 plus Fortune 500 clients as well, ranging from India's largest steel manufacturers to largest tobacco manufacturer, and to consulting companies, tech companies, manufacturing companies, a lot of manufacturing companies as well, and have trained more than 32,500 plus folks. Very strong specialization in the data and the AI world. Various different kind of Fortune 500 clients. So very good mixture of enterprise connect as well, which helps in getting the live projects, internship projects, and placements also. So if you're interested in the data and AI career, do visit the website ivyproschool.com and walk through some of the data and AI courses, specifically the Gen AI courses, which Ivy Pro School offers in collaboration with IIT Guwahati as well as NASCOM and IBM. So that's about the sponsor, guys. Okay. Now, what is the agenda of today? The agenda is that I'm going to give a very, very quick intro into the LLMs. You can ask me any questions about LLMs as well. I will also talk about one specific aspect of this entire platform or entire bot that I've created, which is APIs or application programming interface. Why do we need them? How do we create them? And how do we use them? We'll talk about that as well. We will talk about what most of the Gen AI apps are using and how most of the Gen AI apps are using APIs. I will give you a few examples. At Ivy Pro School, we have actually invested and built monetized platforms using Gen AI. So we'll give you some of the examples of the same as well. Then we will also talk about we build a simple idea together. For example, this insurance bot is just one of the ideas, but we can try and build some more ideas if required. And then I'm going to actually demonstrate how exactly, step by step, that particular bot, that insurance planner bot that I showed you, how it was created. So by the end of today's workshop, you should be able to create the same insurance bot like the one that I showed you today. And remember, today's workshop is part of the two evening series of bootcamp series that we are doing. Today is the second day. Yesterday, if you guys attended, you must have had one bootcamp using Power BI with Ishani. And if you missed that, do look for the videos because that would give you great understanding of how Power BI also works. Okay, and as if you have attended both the workshops, today's as well as yesterday's, then you do get a certificate as well from Ivy Pro School for attending the data and AI, Gen AI bootcamp. So that's the context, guys. Okay. Plus, if you go to Ivy Pro School's YouTube channel, you will find recording of several such bootcamps by industry speakers. So if you have not subscribed to the same, youtube.com/IvyProSchool, please do subscribe to it. You will find, and if you go to playlist and live and videos, you'll find great tutorials, free to use tutorials on specifically Gen AI and various data science and data engineering concepts given by various industry speakers. So that's the background, guys. Let's go into the details. Okay, a very, very quick intro into LLM, right? LLM is the model, is the brain behind popular Gen AI tools like ChatGPT. ChatGPT happens to be just a UI, but the main brain behind it is large language model. And large language model has been in the use in the industry for some time, but there was a monumental paper written by Google researchers in 2020, November 2020, which kind of made it very, very popular as a as a model, and a lot of other companies, specifically OpenAI, which is the mother company of ChatGPT, used that research paper finding, and created a monetizable large language model, which similar to that, a lot of other mega big tech companies have now created large language models. And what they're doing is that they're providing these large language models as a service. So just like how we use electricity, and in order to use electricity at home or at offices, we subscribe to an electricity service provider, right? And we are given and we get access to it, right? Similarly, many of these big tech companies are providing large language models as AI as a service or intelligence as a service. Intelligent as a service, IaaS. So that's is an interesting paradigm shift in the industry that we are seeing, that anybody can subscribe to super intelligence or super artificial intelligence and can build tools, apps, platforms which use intelligence, right? So that's what a large language model service provider does. These AI systems are trained on massive amount of data sets, including text, audio, video. But if you're talking about language models, then they're typically trained on text data. But if it is an image model, large image model, then it would be trained on large data sets of images. So in today's session, because we are going to work with text data, so we'll talk about LLM, which is large language model. So the AI system are trained on massive data sets of text, learning patterns, grammar, facts, and even some creativity, which is emotional content, emotional context behind any conversation. Think of it as a super smart parrot. Now, a parrot normally just repeats what it has seen. However, large language models do much more than that. They actually do not just repeat things that they have been trained upon, but they identify patterns on what they have been built upon or trained upon. And then, when asked, when prompted, so for example, when you send a prompt to ChatGPT, they look for the patterns within their knowledge base and gives you the answer like a human base, like a human being. Because a human being is not very good in memorizing and remembering a lot of amount of data, but it's very good in building insights and patterns from a lot of data. And while we may not remember specific flow of the events from the past, but if we have experienced something in the past, we can utilize that experience and generate a new experience out of it, right? Even if we do not exactly remember each and every detail. Very, very similar to that, a large language model, once it is trained on large amount of data sets, in this case, text, it understands the insights, it remembers the insights and the patterns of the data, not necessarily the exact fact from within the data, right? So do not assume that large language models only repeats the data that it has been trained upon. It actually does not do that. It actually identifies the patterns, identify the insights, remembers the insights and the patterns, and then generate new answers or new prompts as prompted, right? So it actually knows what sounds right based on a particular question and gives you the answer, which approximately sounds right the most. And according to that, it gives you the answer. So that's how, in a very, very short, if I have to explain how large language models work. But there are more detailed videos given on IvyPro YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed, you must subscribe and you will get to understand how Gen AI works. We have created variety of videos on the same. Now, let's talk about the secret sauce behind most of the Gen AI apps that you see in today's time, right? Including ChatGPT. ChatGPT is just a user interface and it connects to a large language model using something called as API or application programming interface. This works like a menu in a restaurant. How does it work like a menu in a restaurant? You see, when you go to a restaurant, right? Let's say this is the kitchen. Now you don't go inside the kitchen. You are sitting in a table here, you're sitting in the table here, you're sitting in the table. Somebody comes to you, or maybe you order through somebody, right? What you want, to the kitchen, but you do not necessarily go inside the kitchen of that restaurant. So that person or that communicator, that messenger who's taking your message, what you want, what your order is, what food you want, and taking it to kitchen, right? And then once the food is ready, bringing you that as a response, that messenger is called as API in the world of AI services, right? What does it mean? Your waiter in this context, the server, the person who's taking your order, the steward who's taking your order, you can consider that person as the API. That is the messenger which takes the data that you're sending, right? For example, in our insurance bot, when I gave this data, this is the data that I gave. This data that I'm giving to whom? This data I'm giving to an API or application programming interface. And that will take this data, send it to a large language model, the model that I have chosen to work with. And then once that large language model understands this data and based on a prompt, so we'll talk about prompting technique as well today, based on the prompt that I have given along with this data to the API, right? It generates a response from the LLM and it then sends the response back to my user interface. In this particular case, my user interface is a Google Sheet. And once I receive the data from the API, from actually LLM through the API, then I display it over here, right? So that is the model. Let me draw it for you. It's a very simple three-step process. This image probably is not doing the justice to it. But let's say the first step is to send a request. Request generally has two components to it. One is the prompt, which is the instructions that you're sending to the large language model, along with some data. Now, prompt is mandatory, data is optional. But in our case, in this particular case, we have a prompt that we are sending as well as this data that you see over here. What is the data? The data about the user who's asking for recommendation on the insurance products, right? So in our case, we are sending both the prompt as well as a data. So we'll see how do we combine the prompt and the data together. So my app, in our case, it is Google Sheet, sends a question or a prompt to the API along with the data plus the data, right? Now this API takes this prompt as well as the data and talks to the AI model. This is the LLM model, large language model. In this case, if I wanted to create an image, then I would have sent this to a large image model. But in our case, we are talking about a large language model. When the API combines the prompt and the data and sends it to the LLM, it gets a response back from the LLM. And once it gets the response back from the LLM, then the API sends it back to the application which requested it. Then that application will then display the information. So if I have to add one more step here, I would say display the response to the user specifically in our case. But it could also be that I don't want to display. I just want to get the response and then maybe take some other. You might have heard of something called as AI agents, right? So here, if I stop here and just display the information to the user and that's it, if my app only does that much, then it would be a general AI app. But if my app can also take some action, for example, in this particular case, in case of our insurance, suppose it does not only recommend the insurance, but it also goes and buys the insurance from, or maybe takes quotations, 3 best quotations from, let's say, 20 different insurance providers, and then it goes and buys the insurance on your behalf as well, then it will become an AI agent. So towards the end, we will talk about the difference between a general AI app versus an AI agent app. An AI agent app essentially takes certain actions based on what the AI is recommending, whereas a general AI app will just display the information received from a AI model or a large language model. That is the basic difference between an AI app and an AI agent. Okay. All right. Let's go back to here. I suppose this is clear now that we send a request. Let me also do one thing. Let me also create a small structure diagram here just to help you understand this even better. Say, for example, what we are talking about is how does this insurance planner bot is working. So here, what we have is a Google Sheet, which you can consider it as a user interface, which has some kind of menu and data collection sheet and so forth. Now, this user interface can be collectively called as my app, right? Because this is what is shown to the user. Now, this app sends two things: prompt plus data to an API service, which you subscribe and you get a specific private key. So how do you get the access to this? Also, I will show you. So you get a private API key, like a secret code to access that API, provided by a AI large language model, right? So this guy is the main brain, right? Now, there are various examples of large language models available in the industry. Google Gemini, OpenAI, various GPT models. So the latest is 4.0 and O 01, O 02, and so forth. There are many models every day, almost every day. They keep launching all these mega tech companies every few weeks. They keep launching a new model, right? The Meta has Llama, and OpenAI has GPT, Google has Gemini, and so forth. And then various models, and how they differ from each other is based on how accurate they are, how much of context or how much of data can they handle. Suppose some models can handle small amount of data, some models can handle large amount of data as well, and so on and so forth. For example, Google Gemini claims that they can handle up to 2 million words or tokens, you may say, worth of data as well as prompt in one question or one response, right? Whereas some of the other models may have lesser capability. So they differ from in terms of how much of data and prompt can they handle and how much of accuracy they have, right? So we send this prompt and data to API. API sends all this thing together after validating the user based on whether you have the authorization, whether you've subscribed to the LLM or not. Then it sends the response back. And again, it goes to the API, and then the API sends the response back to the user interface. And then your app or the Google Sheet or whatever the app platform that you're using, you can display. Or maybe there is another layer that you have, which is where you take the action based on this, which is what we were talking about as AI agents. That is the typical structure of any good or any API based um, apps, Gen AI apps that we see in the market. And there are quite a few of them nowadays. Okay. Almost there is an app for everything. So let's look at some of the examples, some of the famous examples of Gen AI apps, right? There are many apps which are helping learners to learn a new language. For example, English language learning app, or some German language or Mandarin language learning app. But what is the flow that they follow? The user sends a sentence, it goes to an API service, it corrects the grammar, and it suggests the improvements. This corrects the grammar and suggestion of improvement happens at the LLM level, at the AI model level, and then through API it sends the response back to the user. So a lot of language learning apps are there. Duolingo happens to be one of the most popular one over here. Then We have art generator. For example, Midjourney example is Dali, example is Runway. There are many art generator. So they can create images, they can create videos, they can create graphics. Again, you send a description, it returns a beautiful, and it goes to an API, and then it returns a beautiful image, which is very, very common thing that is happening. And for the image generator apps, there are quite a few medical helper or medical aid apps which have come, wherein, let's say, there is an X-ray image, you upload the X-ray image or you send the X-ray image along with a prompt to the image model, and then it gives a analysis of that X-ray back to the user with a very detailed analysis of that X-ray. We have done some health AI health apps as well. Some of the videos of those are there in IvyProSchool YouTube platform. You can actually watch it, build something similar as well. And then, music apps are also there. For example, if you want to create a your own beat, compose your own music, right? So you can actually give a description, it goes to the API, and it also generates music with tones and vocal and whatnot. So you can also do that. So Spotify, it's trying it. There are many other music apps also which are trying it. The latest that I hear is, I heard, so there is a app called as Runway, an AI app, which is which creates videos based on the prompt that you've given. So it's a text to video model, or it can also create motion to images. So image to video model also. The CEO of Runway mentioned in one of the interviews that very soon the OTT series that we watch on Netflix, on Hotstar, or any of these popular OTT platforms. Now, let's say we have watched 5 episodes of one series, right? The sixth episode will be generated by AI based on an individual user's liking, right? Say, for example, I like more action-oriented scenes in my series that I watch, or shows that I watch, TV shows that I watch. So the next episode would be AI generated completely, and the episode that it generates for me could vary from some other user who probably does not like action. So that is going to be that is going to be an interesting thing that is going to happen to the media industry, or imagine what would happen to all these guys who work in the TV and media industry. It's a large industry, right? But AI is able to generate something like that, right? So interesting things are happening. And again, almost all these apps are using the same structure that we spoke about here, right? Just to just to give you the steps that normally most of the, and you guys are young, you can also build your own idea about it. One of our learners built in our Gen AI program, one of our learners built a astrologer app, right? Very detailed astrologer app. Astrology is very famous in India, right? And we all are interested to know what's happening, what's going to happen to our future. So you upload your date of birth, time of birth, location, and whatnot, and it generates a very interesting, customized forecast for the future using astrological science, right? So the idea is something that should come from you, right? Or you can brainstorm with a tool like ChatGPT or Google Gemini to brainstorm, to come up with an idea. Then input would be the ingredients that you have. That means the prompt plus the data. And remember, the data can be text data, can be image data, can be audio data, can be video data, can be of variety of different types. That's the beauty of working with large language model. It's multimodal. That means it's no longer only text driven. It's not only LLM, no longer it's only large language model, but it's also large image model, large video model, and large audio model. So that is also an interesting thing. But yeah, you do need the prompt and the data along with the idea that you have. And API suggests creative recipes, because it goes to the LLM, it can assign creativity to it as well. Even if you're not a creative person, you can instruct as part of your prompt to the LLM to apply creativity to it, and it will give you that creative response back as well. For example, I'm not a musician, but let's say I want to compose a music, but I have got a great detailed description of the kind of music that I want to give, I want to generate. So I can create a nice prompt, provide some examples as data, send it to a large audio model, and it will generate the kind of music that I want to generate, right? Without even having any science in the music. I'm not saying that all the musicians will be replaced. I'm just saying that maybe the musicians' productivity will enhance significantly with the help of AI. So typical flow is very simple. You provide the ingredients, the prompt and the data. Then you give it to the API. API connects to the LLM, right? That means the large language model or the large image model, or basically the AI model, artificial intelligence model, and it gets a response back and gives it back to the user, or maybe takes out an action, right? So that is a typical flow of how these are built, right? As we discussed very clearly that you need a front end, right? Then you need a back end, some kind of a back end which connects to the API. We'll see that today. And then you have to have a private API key, a secret API key that you get when you subscribe to AI models from the AI model provider, secret key that we get from the AI model provider. And remember, AI model provider are like electricity energy providers, right? When you want to subscribe to electricity for your home or for your office, you subscribe to electricity from a electricity service provider, and they give you a consumer number, or they give you a number which is a customer number, which basically becomes your private key, right? And based on how much electricity units you use, you are billed. Similarly, when you subscribe to AI as a service from an AI service provider, you are given an API, secret API key, and that secret API key, through this secret API key, they can track the uses that you have. And based on the uses, they will, of course, bill you. Is that making sense? Right? Based on the uses, they will then bill you. All right. So Prince's question is how to build a career in numerology science. Please guide me. Again, I'm not a numerology expert, but who stops you from creating an app which actually does numerology, right? Because AI, a large language model, knows quite a bit, right? So you can actually do that very easily after today's workshop. And of course, the model, right? This model, in our case, today's case, will be large language model by, we are going to use a large language model by OpenAI, which is GPT 4o. This is the same model which powers ChatGPT. But ChatGPT, remember, is not the AI model. ChatGPT is just a user interface, just the front end, right? But in the back end, there is a AI model which is working, a large language model working, which is GPT-4o. That is the version, you may say, of the model that is currently popular in the OpenAI world, right? This is the main brain, right? This is the main deal. The three things are important to build an AI app or an AI agent, but this is the main brain. This is what you're subscribing when you want to build a AI model. All right. With this concept, let's go into the details of how I have built this model. Now, I'm assuming that nobody knows any coding. So literally, what I'm going to advise you is, of course, we require. So, by the way, just to summarize one more thing, in our case, in the insurance case, the platform that we built, the tool that we have built, our front end that I've decided is Google Sheet. But if you have coding experience, or if you know how to build an UI, UX, or user interface, then you can also use React. You can use React.js. You can use various different platforms. You can use variety of different techniques to create the user interface. For the convenience today, I'm going to use Google Sheet because I'm assuming that everybody knows how to use Google Sheet. It's not a big deal, right? So we will use the front end as Google Sheet. The back end, we will use something called as AppScript coding or AppScript code, which comes as part of Google Sheet. Just like Excel has VBA, Google Sheet has something called as AppScript. So here, the code for this AppScript, I'm going to explain to you. It's very easy to understand. Even if you have never seen a code in your life, it's going to be very easy to understand. And the beauty of this is that even if you do not have a coding background, although I do recommend that, coding is not very difficult to learn, you must learn a little bit of coding definitely in the world if you want to succeed like a professional and not just as a hobbyist. Then you must learn at least more than average level of coding, specifically Python, if not any other code, right? But anyway, today's session, I'm assuming you know nothing. So I'm going to also guide you how to create this kind of a code using ChatGPT kind of a tool as well, right? So we'll use AppScript code, which will allow us to send a prompt plus the data to the API service provided by OpenAI, right? So the first thing first, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to explain you how do you get access to an OpenAI API key, right? It's very easy to get access to OpenAI API key, and of course there can be some investment, some $5 investment to get that. There are free API available by other language model providers, but in today's session I'm going to use this because it's the easiest to get this. So when you Google OpenAI API, you get to this platform. The first link you will get, you create your account here. Once you create your account here, which is free to create the account, then when you go to the dashboard here, you go to API keys, and in the API keys, you click on create API. Now, in order to create your first API, I'm going to give you API key for now, for today. It will be valid for 24 hours. You can try as much as you want, but tomorrow it will become disabled. But believe me, it's a $5 investment to create your API key here, and they give you generous tokens to use. Okay, and you can roughly imagine that one token is equivalent to one word, right? One word, not one character, but one word. So you click on create API key, and then you give the name here, you select the project, whatever, and then the moment it creates the API key, you save that API key, copy it, you save it somewhere so that you do not forget, because next time it is not going to show you this API key, right? So remember to save it because you cannot see it again. Once the API key is created, right? I'm going to revoke it for now. Once the API key is created, save it somewhere because we will require that API key when we want to connect to the AI model from our LLM, from our app. Okay. So that is the first thing. Very easy to create the API key. Once API key is created, all right, then we will go to a sheet, a Google sheet, let's say sheets.new. And under sheets.new, that means I'm creating my first Google sheet. And remember, I am already logged into Gmail, and hence it did not ask me to log in. But if you're not logged in into Gmail, then it will ask you to log into Gmail. And assuming everybody has a Gmail account, and let's name it as Insurance IvyPro AI Insurance Planner, right? Press enter. So this is the name that I've given, and we close this thing. Yeah. And now the first thing I want to do here is that I want to create a sheet whereby I want to collect the user information. The user information sheet in the interest of time, I am just going to copy what I have here, and I'm going to share this sheet with you. And I'm going to paste it here, right? And of course, I'm going to increase the size of the columns. That makes sense to me. And I've done that. So essentially what is there? So I've got age, I've got family size, which is a drop down. How do we create a drop down in Google Sheet? It's very easy. You go to a particular, let's say here, I want to create a drop down. So I will just go to this. I'll go to data, and I will say that create a data validation, and then I can provide the values for this data validation. and I can create that also. Um, I'll just say add a rule and then B2, and then here the add another item is 36. Let's say, although it's not a great thing to do for a continuous variable like this, but just to display, this is how we create the data validation, and then you will have this, right? Now, let me remove the data validation from here. Remove the rule. Okay, because age is a continuous variable, but family size, which is a categorical variable, because you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the family size is defined as a category, right? So for that, it makes sense to create a data validation, and it improves the quality of data that you're collecting, right? So anyway, so that I have already done, and I'm going to share this sheet as well. You can try that. So I've given up to a family size of 6. If you have more, you can click on this pencil button and you can have more rules here, add another item, and you can add, for example, if I add 7, okay? So it will then give an option of 7 as well. Okay. So that's what it is. So these are the columns: age, family size, monthly income, car loan, health status, location, monthly expenses, and so forth, smoker, and so forth. Right. So these are the data that I'm collecting, because these are the important data that any good insurance consultant will also take from a user before advising what kind of insurance policies should the user subscribe to in India, at least. Right. So that's what we are doing here. And let's see. Now, if you notice, I am sticking to, if you notice, I have pasted this into A1 cell specifically, because in my code, to make it simpler, we have hard coded it that age will be collected only from B2, family size will be collected from B3, and so forth. Tanveer Khan has asked, how do we do it using Excel? We have done a few using Excel as well. If you go to IvyPro's YouTube channel, you'll find a few, few things in Excel as well, few Gen AI apps in Excel also, right? So you can actually think of using that also, or maybe review those videos, and you can do the same in Excel using VBA code. Anyway, so this is the information that I'm collecting, and I'll just quickly remove these grid lines. That means I don't want to see the grid lines. So I'll just go and view and show and remove the grid lines, just to make it look slightly simpler and easier to the eyes, right? So this is what we have here, okay? Now, this is my front end where I am going to get the data, right? But where is the prompt? Where and how are we connecting to the API is something that we will see next. In order to connect to the API, I've written a code, and I've used ChatGPT to write that code, right? And I'm going to share that code with you. So the code, I have put it into, this Google Docs file, which I'm going to share with everybody right away, so that you can also see the code and you can play around with the code as well, or copy the code as well, right? And I'll upload this into IvyPro's YouTube channel's description as well of this particular video. What are the things which are happening in this code, right? I will just first give you the summary of the steps, then I'll walk you through the code as well. First, it will open the Google Sheet. Which Google Sheet will it open? The Google Sheet where we have this data. Access the currently active Google Sheet and specify specific sheet where the user inputs are stored. It will read the user inputs. That means these inputs that we have given here. Then it will construct a prompt for GPT. GPT is the AI model, right? GPT is the AI model, AI ML, AI LLM model that we are using here by OpenAI, right? If you're using Google large language model, it will be one of the Google Gemini models and so forth. If you're using Anthropic's model, then it'll be cloud model, which is where Amazon has invested a lot of money. Anyway, so it will construct the prompt. How will it construct the prompt? It will construct the extracted inputs. This is the data that we spoke about, and the structured prompt will combine the prompt as well as the data. And then the prompt includes, then the prompt will be appended with the user data, user details, and ask for specific actionable insurance recommendations. And then it will set up the API request, define the OpenAI URL and the data payload, includes the model, and so this is constant for almost any GenAI app which uses API service, right? It'll have a URL provided by the large language model provider and a data payload, which includes the model, the user prompt, and the API key. That means three things that we are going to send to the LLM: the API key that we have taken or that we have gotten from the LLM provider in step number one that we did before this sheet. Then the model information that we want to use. For example, we want to use GPT-4o model and the user prompt along with the data. The user prompt would have now the data as well, right? And once we get that, we will get the response, right? So we'll send the API request, we will get the response, and then we will format it nicely so that it looks slightly nicer on the sheet that we will show back to the user, right? And then we will write the output. Once we have formatted the output that we get, a response that we get from the GPT model or AI model, then we will display it in our Google Sheet, and that's about it. That's what we will do. And the code for it is written over here. So you can actually copy the code all the way from here. So I'm going to copy this entire code all the way from the beginning, Control C till here. And I will go to, sorry, I will go to this Google Sheet that we were working on. And now look at this, these steps are important because I want to paste this code that I wrote, that I copied, right, into Google Sheet. By the way, that code was created from ChatGPT as well, right? I'm going to go to extensions, and under extensions, you have something called as AppScript. AppScript is a very good way to build a backend, right, or capability which Google Sheet does not originally have. So I'm going to create that backend that I need in order to send all this information along with my prompt to the API and get the response and then display it back. This is what is written in the code, right? Those steps that I mentioned that I showed to you. So when you go to extensions, when you go to AppScript in Google Sheets, then you will see a window like this. And within this window, you will see something like, so yeah, I mean, of course, you have to be signed in and all of that. And then you will see something called as function, my function. Just select all of that, delete it, and then paste the code as it is that you copied from the sheet that from the code that I'll give you. Doesn't matter. Okay, so it has basically two functions in it. The first function is which says format analysis for sheet. We'll talk about it. So this will only format the response that we will get. So we'll talk about that. But actual main function is this one. This is the most important function that we have, right? Now, in this particular function, give me one moment. In fact, I will upload this particular code because this has, I've added some more comments on this particular code so that you'll understand it better. So this is the main function, as I mentioned, to get the insurance recommendation from GPT and display this back to Google Sheet, right? The function starts with something like this. It opens the currently active Google Sheet. That means this particular Google Sheet, right? Remember, I'm still in this particular Google Sheet. I've just gone to the app script of that Google Sheet. It currently opens. So this is the sheet that it will open, and then it gets saved in this variable sheet. And then it will, step number one, it will read the user input from specific cells in Google Sheet. Remember, in this particular Google Sheet, we have given age in B2, family size in B3, family monthly income is B4, car loan is on B5, and so on and so forth. So it's actually reading the user input from here. So sheet.getRange.B2.getValue. This is a native Google Apps Script function. It will extract the data from B2 cell and save it in this variable called as age. Then it will extract the data from D2 cell, which is health status, save it in a variable called as health status. Whether the person is smoker or not, we'll get it from F2. You can see that in F2, we have whether the person is a smoker or not, right? So this is important. It's hard coded. Once you become slightly better into this coding, then you can actually make it more dynamic as well. So family size will get from B3 and so forth. So all this information will get from different cells from the sheet, and then we'll keep storing them in the relevant variables that we are creating. So that is the step number one. Step number two is we'll combine all the data. So this is the data part that we were talking about into a detailed prompt. So this is where I've applied my prompting technique, right? And if you're interested to understand about prompting technique in the IvyProSchool's YouTube channel, I have created some great prompting technique videos as well, which could be helpful for creating a very nice prompt. Okay, for now, this is the prompt that I have created. It says, based on the following user details, provide tailored insurance coverage recommendation for an Indian citizen, because I wanted Indian context to be maintained. Include suggestions for health, life, and other relevant insurance types, along with approximate coverage amounts and premiums. Look at the quality of the prompt, right? If possible, in Indian rupees, right? I don't want the recommendations to come in US dollar or some other currency, but I want the recommendations to come in Indian rupees. If some details are missing or insufficient, highlight this and provide generalized advice, right? Where are we saving? Remember these variables that we have created over here, age and health status and is smoker and all of that. It'll go into the prompt as age, whatever the age is. Let's say age is 35. So this will go into this age here. Health status given over there will come over to this. So these are all becoming part of the prompt now. So these are those variables, and with the help of this dollar and curly brackets that we have here, we are actually accessing the values stored in these variables, and then it is getting saved. I mean, it is getting passed to the prompt. It's becoming part of the prompt. So we are using the variables. And this is a very common thing that is happening currently whenever somebody creates a GenAI app. Once these variables are passed and saved in these cases here, so it'll be like age 35, health status, is smoker is yes or no, family size is family of 4, monthly income is whatever the income is, let's say 55,000 rupees, monthly expenses, let's say 15,000 rupees, home loan is 0, car loan is 0, savings and investments is whatever the investments provided by the user, the location, and so on and so forth, right? Then at the end, again, the prompt has something finishing. Respond in bullet points with the following structure. So I've given a structure as well. How should the response come back from the LLM, right? Again, it's about the quality of the prompt, because here we have specified that give the response back in with insurance type like this, recommended coverage amount, approximate premium, and the brief recommendation, reason for the recommendation as well. So that makes the prompt a very healthy prompt. Can be further optimized, but it's a great start to have it, right? So now, if you notice here, we have included the data as well as prompt. So this is ready, and we are saving that prompt, this entire prompt along with the data, in this variable called as prompt. Now, so that was step number 2. Now in step number 3, we will set up an OpenAI API request. Remember the API that we got, and that API key we have pasted over here. And when I share this code with you, you will have this API key as well over here, right? But again, as I said, after 24 hours, I'm going to take this away, right? I'm going to revoke it, because there can be unnecessary uses. But you can always create your own API key, like how I have shown you in these steps at the beginning of the video today. Now, replace this with your actual API key later, okay? But the API key, OpenAI API key, starts with SK and ends over here, and you have to give it under pair or double quotes. Remember that, right? And let all these things be there. So this is called as an end URL. This is where this API key will go to ChatGPT. So not ChatGPT, GPT model. And here we are using GPT 4.0 mini model, which is very fast model and very cheap model as well. 4.0 mini. So this entire payload basically means the entire prompt along with the data will go to the OpenAI API through this API key, and it will use this model and the user and the prompt. This is the prompt. The prompt contains this entire thing that we have over here, because remember, this is where it is getting saved, the prompt. Okay, this is the payload. This is the most important thing. This is the most important request that we're going to send to the LLM model, right? And so this is where we are sending the response. And once we get the response back from the model, right? Once we send this, we get the response back. And once we get the response back, it can come in JSON format. And once you have the response, you send this response to get formatted properly. So this is where this function is going to be used, the function that we saw at the beginning. This function is replacing the bullet points with the simpler hashes, split the sections marked with hashes into new paragraphs, remove the bold, italics, or code marks for clean text, and remove any excessive blank lines. Because when we get response back from an LLM, especially OpenAI LLMs model, it tries to format with some special characters and so forth. There's something called as a markdown language. So we are kind of removing those characters, extra characters that we get from the response and formatting it to display it properly. So this is the most important function, right? And now go ahead and save it. Don't forget to save it. When you save it, it gets saved, and it'll then see the two functions that we have. This is the most important function. You can give it a name as well, optional, right? Now, remember, this app script is part of this particular sheet. So when you save this sheet in your Google Drive, it is also saving this app script code that we have written. This is the backend of it, right? Now, how do we trigger it? Now, there can be multiple ways to trigger this code. One way of triggering this code could be that you select this particular function here, the main function. Remember the main function, get GPT recommendation, and click on run. Now, what does it do? It runs. So of course, if the first time it was running, it will ask for the authorization. You'll have to click the authorization uh, because it's an external code that we are writing. So it requires some specific permissions from Google that you're sending the data from the Google Sheet to an external service provider, which is OpenAI, and it is running it. Execution has started. And remember, what it is doing is that it is taking the data from individual cells and embedding it to the prompt. And then once it is done, you go back to the Google Sheet and you will see the response comes back in A9 cell over here. If you want, you can merge these and you can have the wraparound so that you can see the data properly. So this is the data that it comes, okay? The health insurance that we saw, the insurance recommendation that we saw, right? Now, but this is very boring to go to the code and to select the function and then click on run. This can be pretty boring. Let's make it interesting, because if you notice in my original thing, I had a button here, generate insurance recommendation kind of a button, which when I clicked, then it took the data and I did not have to open an AppScript window to do it, right? So the same thing I will do. I will have the AppScript thing ready. Let me go ahead and delete this thing. And I will insert a button and then I will link that button to the AppScript that I have created. How do I do that? I go to insert, and under insert, I go to drawing. Remember, I'm trying to create that button. When I go to drawing, I'm going to insert a shape which looks like a button. So I go over here, I go to shapes, and I say I will use this kind of a shape which kind of looks slightly slightly looks like a button. And then I'll double click on it to add text on it, generate insurance recommendation. Of course, you can write anything. And then I select and make it bold as well. If I want to change the font color, you can. Let me change the background color. It's not looking nice, to, let's say, something like an orange or something, right? If you want to remove these black lines also, you can by, I suppose, yeah, you just click on over here and transparent. So just, have a very simple one. And this is done, right? And then you click on save and close. When you click on save and close, within a few moments, you will see it over here. Select it, make it in the middle, maybe reduce the size slightly. Yeah, maybe this is okay. And now, but right now it is not clickable. That means even if I select it, nothing happens. It does not invoke, does not run the function, the script that I wanted to run, which is get GPT recommendation, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select this function name without the brackets, Control C it, copy it, and come over here, and I'm going to assign that script of that function to this button. How? If you notice, when you select this button, you'll see three dots right next to it on the top right hand side. You go there and this is where you will find assign a script. And when you click on it, just paste the name of the main function from AppScript without the brackets, right? And press OK. Now what it has done is that it has understood that if somebody clicks on it, It has to run that script. Now you can see it is running that script. No longer it goes to that AppScript window. You can have it closed as well. It does not matter. You can have it closed also. Does not matter. It is running that script. Running that script meaning it is taking this data, embedding it with the prompt, sending it to the GPT-4o mini model, the AI model, and it's getting the response, formatting it, and displaying it over here. That's it. That's the power of AI model that we have used very quickly. Anybody can create any kind of user defined idea, which can be a pretty interesting thing. You can have your own app for any brain related work that anybody does. It could be an astrology app, it could be a feng shui app, it could be a vastu app, it could be a marriage recommendation app or a counselor app. you know the only limitation is the idea that you come with, right? But using the same workflow, you can actually do that. In the Gen AI program, this was a very simple one that we created, right? In the Gen AI, generative AI program that we do at in IvyProSchool in collaboration with IIT Guwahati, we actually go into the details of exactly how LLM models are created. That means the brain behind it, how those are created, and how can you customize that also. Here, it is a generic model that we are using. We have not fine-tuned the output. If you want to fine-tune the output in such a way that the insurance recommendation that is coming is also as per the Indian insurance IRDA recommendation, insurance for insurance recommend forgot authority that IRDA is a government authority body which kind of controls the insurance regulations. If it has to be authorized to that, so you can actually fine tune. So in our Gen AI program, we go to the details, and the language there we focus is on Python. You end up building 20 plus Gen AI apps, which are not just basic apps like this. The apps which can be deployed in cloud, which can actually commercialize. You can actually, as a freelancer, also sell those apps and earn money. So that is also a very interesting thing. Of course, it is aligned to jobs as well, job market. A lot of openings are there for people who understand the entire workflow of creating Gen AI apps, right? Now, it's Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, IRDA, which is the right thing to call it, IRDA, right? So, guys, this is the flow that I wanted to show you. Just to summarize the flow that we used here, we had an app, we had a front end, which is the Google Sheet. We had a backend, which is the AppScript of it, which allowed us to connect to the API service by OpenAI. Then we used the private secret key API and we connected to GPT-4o model. And then we got the response back and then we displayed it in Google Sheet to the user. That is what we have done today. And in such a short period of time, you were able to create a fully usable AI model, right? AI app actually. Now, if you are interested to know more, as I said at the beginning of the session, do subscribe to IvyProSchool's YouTube channel. You will see various different use cases that we have covered over a period of time of Gen AI, and you can actually try and learn a few, and you can get your hands dirty. The best way to learn Gen AI is to practice, guys. Okay, in our Gen AI course, as I said, we make people work on 20 plus projects, guys, 20 plus Gen AI apps. So that's about what I want to talk about today, guys. I'll be here for the next 3 to 5 minutes. You can ask me any questions related to this industry. Otherwise, I will have the video as well as the code and the tutorial that I showed you uploaded on IvyProSchool's YouTube platform, and you can download and you can try all these things, guys. Yes, the name of the course is Gen AI certification, PG certification with IIT Guwahati. You can find it on IvyProSchool's website as well, maybe. All right, any questions that anybody has? Yes, Rahul, you will get the certificate. People who have submitted, people who have attended both these sessions, yesterday's and today's, will get the certificate, but you get the certificate on your email directly. But if you have only attended one of the sessions, then you do not get the certificate, by the way, Rahul. Any other question? All right, folks who are interested to connect with me, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. If you just search on Google Pratik Ivy, the first link you will get would be my LinkedIn ID. I'll be more than happy to be connected with everybody, whoever is here. Plus, my email address also I will be more than happy to share with you all, pratik at ivyproschool.com. Feel free to give me a ping, but LinkedIn is a great platform to be connected with me. Tanvir's question is, can we have access to OpenAI key used in today's webinar? Yes, I will get it uploaded. Tanvir, is experience needed to get into GenAI? You need dedication. You need the sincerity to learn at least one of the coding platforms. And I do recommend coding languages. I do recommend Python, and I do recommend to learn a little bit of SQL as well, and learn Gen AI properly. That is where the industry is going towards, and anybody can learn it. Believe me. But of course, if you have, I mean, the best learners are those people who are actually who can come with some domain understanding as well. So if you have a passion towards a particular industry, let's say we have seen people who come with sports industry passion or music industry passion, so they have also done pretty well because they've built use cases, Gen AI tools and apps specifically for that particular industry. So that can be very interesting as well. What else course is similar in learning the LLM and app? So same, Gen AI is where we cover everything about LLM and app building. Can I recommend anything, any resource for building RAG in our program? Definitely, we help you build RAG, as well as if you go to Ivy Pro School's YouTube channel, just search for RAG. You will find a few videos where we have covered RAG implementation. People who are wondering what RAG is, retrieval augmented generation, wherein what happens is right now we are relying on general LLM model knowledge. But if you had, imagine if you had tons of documents, let's say you had 100 documents, wherein you have given advice to the users on insurance policies, and you think your advices were great, and you want LLM model to consider the way, the style that you give the advice, or the knowledge base, your own knowledge base of giving the advice. So you can actually have LLM train on your documents, right? And then it will retrieve the intelligence from your documents and not from its own knowledge base. So that is what retrieval augmented generation is called. And we have. Let me show you one video. PDF analyzer. You'll find I have already done it. So you'll find that this is one of the videos where I have explained this process as well of how you can implement an AI app which doesn't rely only on its own memory or own database, but relies on the information base that we provide in the form of documents. The fees and all, the counselors will be able to provide. I am not the expert, DB, but they will be more than happy to provide. Feel free to reach out to them, or you can just give a call on this number as well, or just drop an email on this as well. They'll be more than happy to give you all the details. That'll be the best way to do it. All right. Thank you, guys. As I said, feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn profile. I'll be more than happy to be connected with you all. And I hope to see you in the next wave of bootcamp series that we're doing on Gen AI next week. Thank you, guys, for attending, and have a happy new year, everybody. And I will see you guys next year. Samyajit, I will upload the Google Sheet as well as the code and everything else that we have done today. And then that will be uploaded onto Ivy Pro School's YouTube platform. So maybe tomorrow or maybe on Monday, just look for that and you'll find everything there. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one. Have a good night. Bye bye. Bye, everybody.